Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Catherine Cortez Masto, Senator from the state of Nevada, the Honorable Steny Hoyer, Congressman from the state of Maryland, the Honorable Val Demings, Congresswoman from the state of Florida, and Mr. Jonathan Thompson, Vice Chair of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Jeff Sessions, Attorney General of the United States, the Honorable Ryan Zinke, United States Secretary of the Interior, former Attorney General John Ashcroft, Chairman of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, and the Chief Executive Officer of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, Craig Floyd.
His name is Stephen McDonald. He served with the New York City Police Department. In 1986, at the age of 29, he was shot 3 times by a 15-year-old suspected bike thief. His injuries left him a quadriplegic, confined to a wheelchair for the next 30 years, and living on a ventilator. But that was just the ugly part of Stephen McDonald's story. The beautiful part is what we remember tonight. A few months after the shooting, Stephen forgave his teenage assailant. He spoke to thousands of officers, students, and others about his story and message of forgiveness. He inspired all who knew him and was referred to as God's cop. He was such a remarkable person that we invited Stephen to speak at the dedication dinner for the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in 1991. Addressing the survivors in the audience, he said, "I believe all of your loved ones are like lighthouses in a dark world, and they'll show us the way, and they'll show this country and the rest of the world the right way." Stephen McDonald died as a result of his injuries in January of 2017. And tonight we officially add his name to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. And this evening we are honored to have his wife, Patty Ann, his son, Connor, a New York City police sergeant, his father, David, and other family members in attendance. You have honored us here with your presence tonight. Stephen McDonald's story is special, just like the story behind every one of the other 359 new names that we officially add to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial tonight. To pay them proper tribute, each of their names will be read as part of this ceremony and will forever be etched on the walls of a national monument and in the hearts of a grateful nation. To them and their families, and to all law enforcement professionals who serve and protect us, tonight we say thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Memorial Fund's Board of Directors who've joined me here on the dais, it is my honor and privilege to welcome all of you to this milestone occasion, the 30th Annual Candlelight Vigil, to honor the service and sacrifice of America's law enforcement professionals and their families. And in addition to the more than 30,000 members of the law enforcement family and citizen supporters who have gathered here tonight, we also welcome more than thousands who are watching on a live webcast of the vigil on the internet, thanks to our good friend and partner, officer.com. Our program begins this evening with the presentation of the colors by the United States Park Police Honor Guard, the National Anthem performed by Officer Dustin Dierenfeld of the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department, and the Invocation by our good friend Monsignor Sal Criscolo, who has served as chaplain to first responders here in Washington, D.C. for the past 3 decades. Please rise for the presentation of colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Let us now bow our heads in prayer. Creator of us all, tonight we come before you as your humble servants, asking for your strength as we remember our loved ones, our police officers, who have made the ultimate sacrifice and given their lives in the line of duty. Lord, this is your world. We don't understand why individuals do evil to others. Still, here we choose not to ask why, but ask how. How, Lord of all, can you now turn the pain, the confusion, and the anguish that has been felt and still continues to be felt into something good? You know the pain of these families, of their officers, workers, and of the departments that they have served. We pray that you reach out your hand to show them your love and your comfort. Draw them toward you, for deep in their hearts, they know that you are the only one who can heal their hearts, their minds, and their souls. You do not will such tragedies, so help those left behind to have courage, strength, and faith to carry on. I ask your grace to allow those who are here tonight to stand strong amid the trials and the loss they feel. And in their time and in yours, let them see the light that has been overtaken by darkness and come to realize that you are with them always until that day when we will be united with you and with all who have gone before us. In his name we now pray, amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable John Ashcroft, Chairman of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund.
Together today, we occupy a space that was occupied by Abraham Lincoln about 160 years ago. He had earlier, in the midst of the Civil War at Gettysburg, admonished the listeners that the world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. He emphasized the difference between saying things and actually doing things. And we here tonight honor all of those who stand between us and lawlessness by those who do the work of law enforcement and to support the rule of law. Later, at the conclusion of the war, Lincoln, in his second inaugural, put it this way: it is our job looking forward, not looking back at what they had done, but looking forward to what we could do and what we ought to do. He said it was our job to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace. We have with us tonight, and it honors us that they are here, spouses of those who have given the ultimate sacrifice in protecting our freedom, who would put themselves between the enemies of freedom and our liberty, and do everything possible, including giving their lives. So my first priority here is to recognize those survivors who are with us and to thank them for their presence here this evening. This is a very poignant day. Increasingly poignant because it is also Mother's Day, and so many of those who are survivors here this evening are mothers of children, and they are to be honored as mothers. But all too often they had to have and assume the responsibility of being mother and father to the family. And it is our job to do what we can for the widows and the orphans, that we might have the kind and preserve the kind of liberty and freedom which America stands for and which we cherish. So if I may, I would like to invite all the survivors to stand and allow us as a group of individuals in representing the United States of America to thank those of you who are survivors. Would you please stand at this time and allow us to thank you? Please stand up wherever you are. Thank you. Thank you. Look around. Look around. Tonight we're here to honor America's peace officers. Many call it the thin blue line, a strong and determined national line of protection, the line between right and wrong. But we're here especially to pay tribute to those that made the supreme sacrifice. And those are the names to be added to the wall. 21,541 names will be on the National Memorial, including the 360 new additions that are to be officially added this evening. Freedom isn't free. There are those who have paid a price for it, and I am grateful, and I'm sure you are grateful as well. The Memorial Fund is more, though, than looking backward. It is an opportunity for us to look forward, as Lincoln looked forward, that we should address the issues, care for those who remain, but also address the issues. And I believe that it is our sacred duty to honor the fallen by stopping the falling. And we each, in our own way, in this great country, can encourage law enforcement and help protect them by building a better understanding. We can begin by respecting the law, restoring the respect for the rule of law in our nation, respect for freedom, respect for liberty, respect for each other, for judges and those who wear the badges, and those of us who are support in the community. One of my main concerns, thank you. One of my main concerns is not just lawyers who are killed in the line of duty, but the lawyers who have been ambushed, who are targets simply because they represent the idea of defending the liberty and freedom of America. And sadly, over the last 5 years, 61 law enforcement officials, professionals, have been shot and killed in cold-blooded ambush attacks, including 9 this last year. That's unacceptable for America. We must stand up and be clear that it is unacceptable. Those who spend their lives seeking to defend individuals should not be shot by them. And the very individuals who have committed these murders are part of the population that our law enforcement community protects. I'm thinking of the New York police officers, those in Southport, those in Harris County, Texas. It's a matter of deep concern to every American. John Donne said it years ago eloquently in poetry: never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. When a police officer is shot, each of us dies in some measure, and we must resist it in every respect. The names that we'll be reading here tonight are now inscribed on the National Memorial. But it's not enough simply to carve names on the wall, looking back at their heroism and at their devotion. We need to tell the inspiring stories of these individuals, the heroism, the dedication, the devotion behind those names for which they died. They died to safeguard liberty. Every citizen in this nation should be humbled by their sacrifice, and we should live differently as a result, with a profound respect for what they mean. And that's why we're building a National Law Enforcement Museum. The stories of our fallen heroes will be told in the museums space. It'll be the heart and soul of the museum, the Hall of Remembrance, but we want it to be a hall of inspiration so that youngsters and oldsters like me who come to the nation's capital will have an opportunity to feel at the very bottom of their existence the very importance of law enforcement. The mementos that have been left at the memorial walls by families and friends will be displayed at the museum. The museum will provide a walk-in-the-shoes experience so people can get a real idea of what law enforcement is about, how it's undertaken, the risks there, and the opportunity for goodness that is expressed by individuals who embrace the opportunity of law enforcement. Our organization has been proud to take the lead in this effort, and I'm pleased to announce that after some 20 years of determined effort, the National Law Enforcement Museum will open on October 11th of this year. Many of you provided much needed help along the way. We are grateful for your support, and we look forward to your sharing in this opening. Tonight we begin National Police Week, a week when America honors its peace officers. A few blocks from here, we have a national monument honoring law enforcement profession, a monument that will forever remember those who have fallen. In a few short months from now, we will have a national museum to tell the story of the real-life dedication and sacrifice that those individuals made. Few professions receive such honor and respect, and none are more deserving. So it's with that in mind that I thank you for this opportunity to be with you this evening and your willingness to participate in this recognition of those who have given all they could in behalf of our liberty and freedom, and honoring those survivors who go forward in support of the ideals of freedom and liberty. I'm pleased that so many people of leadership responsibility have come to be a part of this evening's program. Unfortunately, due to an unavoidable conflict, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristen Nielsen, could not be with us tonight. I did want to acknowledge, however, the presence of Acting Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, Claire Grady, who is one of the honored guests here on the dais, and I want to invite you to welcome her with a round of applause at this time. Claire. As many of you will remember, and I hope it strikes a favorable chord with you, I had the privilege of serving the United States as the Attorney General of the United States, to preside over the Justice Department, a community of individuals similarly dedicated to freedom and justice. I always like to say that justice was the one department of government that had a value for its name. And I thought justice was almost an acronym: judgment, understanding, J-U, S-T-I, in the middle of the word, simply total integrity is what we need there. Judgment, understanding, simply total integrity, compassion, and equity. It's important to the United States of America, to every citizen. It's important to the world that justice in the United States be something that is focused on the rule of law, which is the safeguard of liberty in our culture. And I'm pleased to honor and privileged to introduce a very close friend and a former colleague of mine, the 84th Attorney General of the United States. Jeff Sessions made it clear from his first day in office that he had no greater priority than to promote officer safety, officer morale, and public respect for the work of law enforcement. He's now well into his second year in office, and the Attorney General has held true to that commitment. The rule of law is part of his DNA. It is as much a part of him as has been the rule of law for those who have literally laid their lives on the line in enforcing the law across America. As a result of his dedication to law enforcement officers and safety, officers are safety overall. Last year's total of 129 fatalities were the second fewest in a single year since 1959. This is very helpful to us in so many ways. Officer morale has increased and polls show that the vast majority of Americans highly respect law enforcement, as we should, and as is evidenced by your involvement here this evening. Tonight, I wanted to return to this candlelight vigil to express in person my admiration for this great Attorney General, his dedication to the rule of law. And I want to thank him for his willingness to return to the vigil to express his personal endorsement for our nation's law enforcement officers and their families. It is an honor indeed for me, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce the Attorney General of the United States, my good friend, a public servant, a friend of law enforcement and the rule of law, Jeff Sessions. Attorney General Sessions. Get this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. John Ashcroft is a fabulous and great American. As most of you know, we served together on the Judiciary Committee of the United States Senate, partners in so many battles, and I watched with great admiration his leadership at the Department of Justice and would be so pleased to be a fraction of the effective Attorney General he was. Jonathan Thompson and Chuck Canterbury, Chief McLean of the Park Police, and Chief Newsom of the D.C. Police Department, Chairman Pye on the National Blue Alert, great young leader in America today, partner in the cabinet, Ron Zinkley, and Craig Floyd, the CEO of your group. It's an honor to be with you. I am honored beyond expression to serve as your Attorney General. And I feel daily the weight of my responsibilities. After over 16 years in law enforcement, I know what your work is all about. I know what you do. I know that without your courage, steadfastness, and sense of duty, the job would not be done. And we all know that in the performance of that duty, we lose the lives of some fine officers every year. What is that job, that profession that you've given your life to? It is to place your badge, your skills, even your lives between the righteous and dutiful Americans and the predators that threaten them. It is tough work as well as moral and noble work, and it is essential. It is crystal clear that law, respected, honored, enforced, is the crowning glory of this country. I do not only speak of courts, but primarily tonight of those in blue who walk our streets, interacting daily with real victims and real criminals. That's where justice must be done. President Trump has repeatedly said that he is the law and order president, and the first order he gave me on my first day in office was to back the women and men in blue. And you can be sure that is the pole star of my efforts. And you can be sure that this Department of Justice recognizes and honors the courage, skill, and professional of our law enforcement officers. For over 30 years, with strong leadership, better training, policies, improved education, crime went down in America. The homicide rate fell by half. Thousands of lives were saved. Law enforcement led the way. But it seems we've forgotten some of the proven principles of law enforcement. State and federal prisons have been reduced. The number of law enforcement officers have declined, and crime has begun to rise again. Crime is a direct threat to freedom, to public safety, and economic prosperity. No factory, no modern grocery store or pharmacy can operate where there's no public safety, and there is no doubt that the destruction from rising crime falls earliest and hardest on the poor and our minority citizens. We value and affirm all our citizens and must make all our communities safe. We can never cede a community block or street corner to the criminal element. We can never capitulate to lawlessness at our borders. To do so is to give our very sovereignty to the outlaws. Law is more than an abstraction. Law must be made real. That means those who destroy, abuse, maim must be stopped. Victims' rights must be vindicated. And that means we must honor and support those who protect us. And it is fitting and right that we join together annually as a nation to remember those who have given their all for us. I am reminded of the sacrifice of these wonderful American law enforcement officers every time I sign a letter to the families of every officer that has lost their life in the line of duty. And I believe it is one of my highest callings to bring attention to your successes, to encourage your fellow citizens to support you in your demanding and difficult work. So tonight, we remember our fallen heroes. We mourn their loss, and we rededicate our lives to preserving, protecting, and defending our principles of ordered and constitutional liberty that serve us so well, uniquely among the entire world. As long as I'm Attorney General, the Department of Justice will have the back of all honest and honorable law enforcement officers. So as we close, we ask God to bless the souls of all those we honor tonight. May God bless each of you, and may God bless this wonderful country of ours. Thank you.
You can have my heart, but it isn't new. It's been used and broken and only comes in blue. It's been down a long road, and it got dirty on the way. If I give it to you, will you make it clean and wash the pain away? You can have my heart if you don't mind broken things. You can have my life if you don't mind these tears. Well, I heard that you make all things new, so I give these pieces all to you. If you want it, you can have my heart. So beyond repair, nothing I could do. I tried to fix it myself, but it was only worse when I got through. Then you walked right into my darkness, and you're speaking words so sweet, and you hold me like a child till my frozen tears fall at your feet. You can have my heart if you don't mind broken things. You can have my life if you don't mind these tears. Well, I heard that you make all things new, so I give these pieces all to you. If you want it, you can have my heart. Well, I heard that you make all things new, so I give these pieces all to you. If you want it, you can have my heart. If you want it, you can have my heart.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jonathan Thompson, Vice Chair of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund.
Good evening. Before we introduce the next presenter, I wanted to take a moment and thank those that make much of this happen. The staff of the foundation and the memorial are phenomenal people. Every day they come to work with one thing in mind, and that's to never let this country forget those that have fallen. Please join me in showing your appreciation to the staff of the foundation and the memorial. Thank you all. Tonight's ceremony could not occur without the generous contributions of so many. On behalf of the Memorial Fund's Board of Directors, I want to recognize all of our National Police Week sponsors and partners. It's because of their generosity and their contributions that we can hold these events. The first is Verizon, one of our longtime corporate partners, a very generous supporter of the Law Enforcement Museum and a member of our Board of Directors. This is their second year as presenting sponsor for the Police Week, and I'd like to acknowledge and thank their representatives who serve on the board with me. He's joining us tonight, Gabe Esposito, who's here on the dais. Gabe, thank you. Our second National Police Week sponsor has been a stalwart supporter of ours and the organization for more than 20 years. They call themselves the Police Unity Tour. Their motto says it all. We ride for those who died. Their goal is to raise awareness about officers and deputies who die in the line of duty and to raise funds for the Memorial Museum. Tonight, I am pleased to tell you that yesterday, over 2,800 riders toured from all places across this country. They came, they pedaled, and they raised an enormous amount of money. I'm honored to tell you that yesterday they handed a check to our executive director and CEO for $2.8 million. Here's something you may not know, though. Collectively, in 20 years, they have raised more than $25.6 million for those that have fallen. At this time, I would like to ask the Police Unity Tour founder and chief executive officer, Pat Montori, along with executive director Harry Phillips, the chief financial officer Jimmy Waldron, and chief sponsor Mark Kovar, vice president in Jersey PBA, to please stand and be recognized. One last sponsor acknowledgement. As you heard, the National Law Enforcement Museum will open on October 11th. None of that would have been possible without the support and the phenomenal backing of Motorola Solutions. They are the lead sponsor and have donated more than $18 million to ensure that our nation had a museum to tell the stories of our fallen heroes. Their generosity is extreme, and it is so greatly appreciated. We're proud to have their Executive Vice President, Mark Hacker, here with us tonight, as well as Cynthia Yazdi and Kathy Seidel. Thank you so very, very much. As the Attorney General Ashcroft mentioned shortly ago, there's probably no more important group of guests with us tonight than the surviving members of our fallen law enforcement heroes. The concerns of police survivors, better known simply as cops, is our nation's support group for the families and colleagues of our fallen heroes. Cheryl Schultz is the national president of Concerns of Police Survivors. Cheryl's journey that brought her to us tonight began on August 17th, 2002, when her husband, Kevin, a Pojoaque Pueblo, New Mexico police officer, drowned while rescuing a 12-year-old boy. Cheryl has dedicated her life to helping others who, like her, suffered enormous pain and the loss. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and a privilege, someone I consider a friend, someone I look up to in so many ways. Ladies and gentlemen, Cheryl Schultz.
We have but one crack at this life to bring glory to God. Clifford Clark. On August 9th, 1958, a man was born. He grew up with a lot of broken pieces in his life at a very young age. He lost 2 siblings. He lost his mother at age 12 to a drunk driver. He then entered the foster program. Later, he lost his father to disease. He took the broken pieces of his life and became a soldier, a law enforcement officer, a godly man, my husband, the father to our son, a brother and guardian to many. August 17th, 2002, ended his watch. On this day, he dove into a river and saved a young boy that was drowning. He was in the right place at the right time with a decision to make. A lifetime of putting the pieces of his life in place came together. He was able to save the boy and finished his last act of service. As the light left his eyes, he completed his course on earth by the side of that river. His last act of service here on earth, a success. Kevin Schultz was his name and he was mine. Early in our marriage, he gave me a passage in the Bible 12 years before I needed it. At the time, it meant very little. I actually dismissed it. When I came across it, I found that he had marked it with his name and a date in my Bible. Allow me to share it with you. It is found in Philippians 2, 12 through 15. He had no idea at that time the purpose or impact it would make on my life just 2 years after he had died when I found it. Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God that worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure. Do all things without murmuring and disputing, that ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world. I was here with my 8-year-old son 15 years ago, sitting in these same seats, lighting a candle just as you will. The light represented to me the life that he lived and gave freely to others, including that small boy he saved as the last gift. As I lit that candle 15 years ago, I reached over to another survivor, and the flame was transferred between us. Our lives were connected that very moment as survivors in this blue family who surrounded us and welcomed us that night. It is my belief that Kevin would want my light to shine bright and my life to be bright and happy. But believe me, I remember when I didn't think that would be possible. I have learned over time, with the help of those people I met during my first National Police Week and through COPS, that I can be. I have learned from many and watched many memorials over the years, coming back to National Police Week each year, and by me helping others, Kevin will never be forgotten. Through his legacy, me and our son, Kagan, we honor this legacy by continuing to live. As we transfer the flame tonight from candle to candle, there's a spark ignited, shared between us all. The light and life of our officers, of our beloved family members, has been transferred to us. We take our brokenness and make a new future. We make a new you. You cannot walk away from the relationships we have experienced without being touched by them and without being changed. Our lives without our officers look differently than they did when we still had them. I am challenged daily to take these broken pieces I have been given, just as Kevin did in his lifetime, to create a beautiful mosaic. Our officers will be the special piece of that mosaic and never forgotten. But new pieces will be added to our lives. Don't be afraid to let that happen. I want to thank you all, the law enforcement officers in attendance tonight, for your support. A special thank you to all those amazing officers who have ridden their bikes in memory of officers this week. You have no idea how much it means to us to know our officers will never be forgotten by their brothers and sisters in blue. I want you all to know that you are all forever a piece in my mosaic. Thank you.
Beautiful words. Thank you, Cheryl. When we dedicated law enforcement's national monument 27 years ago, there were more than 12,500 names on its walls. As a special tribute to those men and women, we read each of their names in a final roll call of honor. It lasted a full 24 hours. Every year since, we have given that same honor to each name that has been added to that national treasure. We continue that proud tradition tonight with the reading of 360 names that we now officially dedicate on the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. 129 of those fallen heroes died in 2017. Another 231 made the supreme sacrifice in earlier years, but had slipped through the cracks of history and were only recently discovered by memorial research staff and volunteers across the country. The names will be read by the Memorial Fund's Board of Directors and other special guests. They will be read in order of the state in which they served. At this time, I would like to invite Attorney General Sessions to begin this evening's roll call of honor.
From the state of Alabama, Benjamin Lawrence O'Brien, James Durand, Sebron J. Crook, John S. Harrington.
From the state of Arizona, Alfred Moore, Paul Lazinski, Rupert M. Hopkins.
From the state of Arkansas, Timothy Allen Braden, Patrick Neal Weatherford, Keith Bernard Bradford Sr., Kevin C. Mainhart.
From the state of California, Michael Robert Foley, Lucas Forrest Chalou, Andrew Joseph Camilleri Sr., Robert Paul Rumfeld, Murray F. Olson, Louis Allenson, Robert Allen French, Jason Allen Garner, Maurice William Halloran.
Keith Wayne Boyer.
From the state of Colorado, Molly Tyler, Zachary Spurlock Parrish III.
From the state of Delaware, Stephen Rommel Floyd Sr., Stephen Jamel Ballard, Thomas John Hannon Sr.
From the state of Florida, Steve R. Bennett.
Continuing from the state of Florida, Joe William Hetty Jr., Joshua S. Montad, William Tampus Bishop, Julie Ann England Bridges, Matthew Scott Baxter, Richard Samuel Howard III, Norman Cecil Lewis, Deborah Lucia Clayton, Benjamin J. Carroll.
From the state of Georgia, Curtis B. Ballou, Christopher James Monica, Torre Nukarama Haywood, Michael Christopher Butler, Julian Reed Palmer.
Continuing from the state of Georgia, Christian Nicole Horn, W. Richard Duncan, Gregory Michael Marr, James Martin Wallace, John Kimmy.
From the state of Illinois, Raymond Anthony Morrell, Bernard W. Damagala, Andre Van Vegten, Patrick Crowley, Ryan Matthew Albin, Jamie Joseph Allen Cox, Kevin Joseph Brewer.
From the state of Indiana, Andrew Dillon, John Watterson, Aaron William Allen, Harrison B. Wells.
From the state of Iowa, Mark Jason Burbridge.
From the state of Kentucky, James Simpson Harrison, David Ray Gibbs, Nicholas Aniceto Rodman.
From the state of Louisiana, Robert Cleveland Johnson, Donna Weems LeBlanc, Michael David Louvier, Sean Thomas Anderson, Justin Levi Beard, Michael Paul Middlebrook, Marcus Anthony McNeil.
From the state of Maine, Nathan Michael Desjardins, Christopher M. Gardner.
From the state of Maryland, Sean Matthew Suter, Sander Benjamin Cohen.
From the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Seth A. Noyes, Raymond P. Semino, Jeremiah Joseph O'Connor, Frederick Aloysius Bell, John Joseph Shanahan.
From the state of Michigan, Alan Scribner, James Sutton, Donald Olson Kimbrell, Ryan Keith Settlemeyer, Timothy James O'Neill.
Continuing from the state of Michigan, Josiah Coates Hazelton, Jonathan William Raymond Ginka, Eric Brian Overall, Thomas Clarence Bunker, Danny John Cromer.
From the state of Minnesota, William Allen Matthews. From the state of Mississippi, Donald William Durr, James Edward Clark, Bobby Jean Spencer.
From the state of Missouri, Carl Thomas Cosper Jr., Gary Lee Michael Jr., Edward H. Culver.
From the great state of Montana, Montana State Trooper Mason Palmer Moore.
From the state of Nevada, Charleston Vernon Hartfield, Chad William Parquet.
From the state of New Jersey, Christopher A. Vidro, Matthew Lawrence Tarantino.
Heroes do live forever. From the state of New Mexico, Andrew J. Dominguez and Stephen Lawrence Ackerman.
From the state of New York, Craig E. Lehner, Franklin G. Dix, Kevin Michael Haverly, Charles Dennis Cole Jr., John Brannigan, John E. Hoy.
Continuing from the state of New York, Dennis Shea, Charles J. Cameron, George M. Yeager, Thomas F. Gallagher, Charles A. Berberich, John W. McCormick.
Continuing from the state of New York, William H. Galbraith, George Dapping, Brian L. O'Donnell, Thomas F.J. O'Grady, Martin Maloney, Gustav August Beder, Jr.
Continuing from the state of New York, Daniel C. O'Connor, Gerald Rex, Charles J. Clark, Harold John Smith, William T. Martin, Annetta G. Daniels.
Continuing from the state of New York, Jacqueline C. Schaefer, Peter O. Rodriguez, Dennis Reed McLarney, Dennis Morales, Tracy L. Tchaikovsky, Joseph A. Cavatola.
Continuing from the state of New York, James M. Burke, Cheryl D. Johnson, Allison A. Beckles, Robert A. Montanez, Donald J. O'Leary, Jr., John A. Russo.
Continuing from the state of New York, Patrick P. Murphy, James W. Monahan, Charles Gilbert Gittins, Jr., Robert W. Kaminsky, Sean M. Mahoney, Scott V. Stelmach.
Continuing from the state of New York, Otto R. Espinoza, Stephen Joseph Bonanno, Peter D. Chachicho, Demetrius Hopkins, Charles R. Gunzelman, Michael Kenneth Davis.
Continuing from the state of New York, Leroy Dixon, James A. Betso, Matthew J. Gay, Luis A. Lopez, Alexander Figueroa, Edmund P. Murray.
Continuing from the state of New York, Ronald A. Richards, Louis Pioli, Charles M. Karen, Marcy Sims, Wayne A. Jackson, Michael J. Galvin.
Continuing from the state of New York, Donald S. Kneff, Andrew L. Soroka, Deborah A. Garbett Jeff, Kenneth W. Rosello, Michael E. Glazer.
Continuing from the state of New York, Michael V. Quinn, Stephen T. Kabinski, Stephen D. McDonald, Terrence Scott O'Hara, Miosotis P. Familia.
Continuing from the state of New York, Darrell J. Burrows, Sr., Brian S. Faub, Joel R. Davis, Robert J. Johnson, Edward Pullman.
From the state of North Carolina, Zach C. Ramsey, J. Russell Mamilar Jr., Megan Lee Callahan, Justin James Smith, Veronica Skinner Darden, Wendy Letitia Shannon.
From the state of North Dakota, Colt Eugene Ollery.
From the state of Ohio, Franklin Stone, Frank M. Morrison, Donald Orville McLaughlin, Martin Arnold Stanton, David J. Fahey Jr., Bradley Thomas Scott, Samuel John Motz, Justin A. Leo, Stephen Eric Desario, Marvin Scott Moyer.
From the state of Oklahoma, William H. Johnston, Sean Freedom Cookson, Edward Jason Wright, Stephen Roshan Jenkins Sr., Donald Heath Meyer, Shaq Palmer, Henry Lester Cotton, Justin Michael Turney, lest we forget.
From the state of Oregon, John Edward Lawrence.
From the state of Pennsylvania, Daniel O'Brien, Henry Hess, William Shields, Thomas Pugh, John A. Rao, Charles Andrew Wyke.
Continuing from the state of Pennsylvania, George Ralph Watt, John Barner, William McKinley King, Howard A. Lawton, Francis Warren Lieb, Edward Frederick Stever, Richard V. Mahoney.
Continuing from the state of Pennsylvania, George French Brown, Henry Unger, Robert R. Walker, Edward Holmes, Sean Delbert Rager, Abner A. Hull Jr., Scott A. Moyer.
Continuing from the state of Pennsylvania, Adam Strunk, Nicholas Clemens Tomei, William Paul Roth, Brian David Shaw, David Michael Weaver, Robert Earl Zimmerman.
From the great state of Pennsylvania, Carl Postelin, Charles Robert Oglesby, Chester Arthur Coots, Joseph B. Malloy, Zori Andrew Remley, and George Edward Higgins.
Continuing from the state of Pennsylvania, Joseph Roland Brown, Edward Clarence Jackson, John Patrick McLaughlin, James A. Walsh, Michael Paul Stewart III, Thomas Morris Ulsh.
Continuing from the state of Pennsylvania, William Baker, Thomas H. Snyder, James Young, Jacob Pennington Boyer, Henry Lucas, James Richard Taylor, James H. Kelly.
Continuing from the state of Pennsylvania, Joseph Nutter, Francis Quinlan, Nathaniel Thomas Holt Jr., John N. Blanford, Daniel B. Clinton, William J. Saunders.
Continuing from the state of Pennsylvania, John J. Noon, John Daughtry, Robert Clarence Taylor, William John Gormley, John Francis Maloney, Edwin Wildridge, and Frank Victor Maroney.
Continuing from the state of Pennsylvania, Donald Allen Oldfield, Raymond Diaz Jr., Samuel Lucchino, Valentine Boos, Charles W. Dimmock, William Brownlee Myers, John Thomas Caslin.
From the state of South Carolina, William H. Richards, Henry Cornelius Hardy, Devin Presley Hodges, John King, James Maxey King, Henry Buford Graves, James Perry Bagwell, James Eric Chapman, William Henry Tolley, Daniel Keith Rebman Jr., Jason Gregory Harris.
From the state of Tennessee, Abner Dement, Lee S. Eldrith, William M. Hunt, John Mansfield Rush, Glenn Ernest Giles, David Harold Rader, Robert Bolin Sr., Eric Wayne Mumau, Jimmy Dwight Tennyson.
From the state of Texas, Elise Ann Ibarra, Louis L. Cashett, Tipton M. Simmons, Clinton Francis Greenwood, Santiago Hinojosa, Steve Albert Perez, Jerry Roland Walker, Elias Martinez Jr., Thomas Doyle Ray Jr.
Continuing from the state of Texas, William Cincinnati White, Miguel Moreno III, Jose T. Garza, Kenneth Malcolm Copeland, James Jackson Hunt, W. A. Hale, Mark Gregory Diebold, Shauna Renee Tedder.
Continuing from the state of Texas, Thomas Patrick Nipper, Damon Charles Allen, Floyd East Jr., Monty Dale Platt, Charles Eanes, Silas A. Gamble, Otto Henich, Jason Matthew Fan.
From the state of Virginia, Lewis Washington Roper, Walter E. Snow, Curtis Allen Bartlett, Michael Timothy Walter, Burke Morgan Matthew Bates, Henry John Cullen III.
From the state of Washington, Randall Scott Gibson, Fred Hickson. From the state of West Virginia, Aaron Lloyd Crook.
From the state of Wisconsin, Eric Allen Lyons, Jason Thomas Weiland.
Continuing from the state of Wisconsin, Anthony Joseph Borostowski. From the state of Wyoming, Charles Henry Edwards Jr., Mark Lamont Meacham.
From the federal law enforcement agencies, Nelson B. Klein, Jr., Edward John Nartzer, Sheila Jean Regan, Lori J. Fournier, Gerard D. Senator, Rex Aaron Stockham, Ricky O'Donnell.
Continuing from the federal law enforcement agencies, Dwight Bernard Blackman, Jr., Isaac Morales, Rogelio Martinez.
Continuing from the federal law enforcement agencies, Eugene Thomas Cox, James Herbert Workman, David John Hofler,
Continuing from the federal law enforcement agencies, Clement McCausland, Noah H. Burns, Russell Wireman, Anthony Dunleavy Garden, Alexander S. Whiteley, John A. Barrow, Kenneth J. Doyle.
From the United States Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, David Torres Chaparro, Benjamin Antonio de los Santos Barbosa, Roberto Medina Mariani, Angel Luis Lorenzo Gonzalez, Hector Luis Matias Torres.
From the Railroad Police, Charles Krill, Herbert D. Cook, Leonard M. Kennedy, James Raymond Nolan, William Carey Reynolds, Charles Monroe Long.
From Tribal Nations, Houston James Largo, Ugashan Curtis Blackbird, Nathan Bradford Graves.
Out of respect for these fallen heroes and their families, from the state of Oklahoma, David James Wade. From the state of Texas, Jerry Ronald Walker. May these fallen heroes of America rest in peace, and may they and their families never be forgotten. Behind every name read here tonight, and on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial, are stories and memories that burn brightly, tonight and always. Stories that inspire us, and memories that cannot be extinguished. As a symbol of that eternal remembrance, we will now light the memorial candle. And I would ask Attorney General Sessions and COPS National President Cheryl Schultz to please come forward and do the honor. The flame will then be passed to each of you with the help of the trustees of the Concerns of Police Survivors.
son I might have known. If God had granted me a son, the summers die one by one, how soon they fly on, and I am old and will be gone. Bring him peace, bring him joy. He is young, he is only a boy. You can take, you can give, let him be, let him live. If I die, let me die, let him live. Bring him home, bring him home, bring
They are mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sons and daughters. They are chiefs, sheriffs, constables, deputies, troopers, and special agents. They are our colleagues, protectors, and friends. But there is one word that fits them all: hero. Not because of how they died, but because of how they lived. Tonight, we honor the fallen and all who continue to follow in their footsteps of law enforcement service, members of America's thin blue line of righteousness, protection, and hope. It is a warning for the wicked and a beacon of hope for the righteous. In cities and towns across our nation, our law enforcement professionals have never stood taller nor prouder. We have witnessed their tireless devotion to public safety. We have been humbled by their selfless displays of courage, and we have mourned when they fell in the performance of duty. They advance when others flee, fight when others cower, stand up for what is right when others stand by. Common men and women inspired to perform uncommon acts of courage and compassion, always willing to put the safety and welfare of others above their own. With more than 21,000 names etched on the walls at the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial a few blocks from here, we stand shoulder to shoulder to honor these men and women who are now part of law enforcement's eternal legacy of honor. But with the addition of new names each year on the National Monument to the Fallen, we cannot ignore the terrible price that so many have paid to help harden a protective shield of freedom and public safety. We honor and remember those fallen heroes now and always, just as we honor and remember their surviving family members and colleagues. To all other survivors who have joined us here tonight, please know that you and your loved one will never be forgotten. As we raise our candles skyward in silent tribute, let us solemnly pledge to always remember and cherish those who have fallen, those who have been left behind, and those who continue to serve.
Well, I heard there was a secret chord David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? Well, it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Your faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof, her beauty and the moonlight overthrew ya. But she tied you to a kitchen chair, she stole your throne and she cut your hair, and from your lips she drew the hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. You say I took my name in vain, I don't even know the name, but if I did, well really, what's it to ya? There's a blaze of light in every word, it doesn't matter what you heard, a holy, unbroken hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. I did my best, it wasn't much. I couldn't feel, so I tried to touch. I've told the truth, I didn't come to fool you. And even though it all went wrong, I'll stand before the Lord and song with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah, 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 hallelujah,
Ladies and gentlemen, for your safety, please carefully extinguish your candles at this time.
Would like to acknowledge our featured singers and participants who received no earlier introduction. Deputy Superintendent Pauline Wells of the Cambridge, Massachusetts Police Department, who performed Broken Things and Hallelujah. Sergeant Michael Devine of the New York City Police Department, himself the surviving son of a fallen DEA agent who performed Bring Him Home. Thank you, Michael. And our bagpipe soloist, retired DC Metropolitan Police Officer Chris Jackson. Thank you. Please rise for the retreat of colors. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our ceremony. We thank all of you for coming. May God bless you, and may God bless all of America's peace officers and their families. Thank you.